Hi, this is your introduction to the Zemon GRE course. Let's go. Welcome. This video will serve as an introduction to the Zemon GRE course. I'm going to start with our principles, and then we're going to move into more specific learning and memory methodologies. Then I will talk about the outline of the Zemon GRE course, and finally, I will give you some next steps that you can do today. So first up, we're going to talk about the resources and expectations for this course. You're going to need a few resources to successfully go through the course. The main ones are the official guides to the GRE. There's the main official guide to the general test, and then there's an official guide to the verbal reasoning and quantitative reasoning sections, which have a lot of practice problems in them. Those are important. Besides that, in this course, all you need is a good journaling notebook and a pen to write with. As for the expectations, this is a structured study plan of 5 days a week for 12 weeks. Expect daily short video lessons on the content strategies and tactics, followed by practice problems or full-length exams. And this course is also based on the best practices in learning and memory and teaching. So speaking of which, what is Zemin Review? So it is a curriculum based on the best practices in learning and memory in order to teach topics efficiently with enhanced long-term recall. The idea is if you can learn and remember things in the best way, you're going to have the best results on the exam. So what are the principles that go into that? First, the course is designed around a spaced repetition system. That means we're going to be reviewing concepts at specified intervals to maximize recall. This is how the course is structured. Then I will give you a technique called memory palaces as well. There's a whole video on this. These are visualizations tied to physical locations that help you remember the most difficult topics. The course is also based on directness. That means learning new concepts in context as close to how you're going to use them on the exam. Then we deal with chunking things. This means we group similar concepts together in order to develop deeper associations. And you'll see how that is also done with how we structure the course. And finally, we believe in variety, right? So revisiting similar material in different ways, this can help you pique interest and remember things better. So what is a space repetition system more specifically? This is a system that is used to combat the natural forgetting curve. We all have a forgetting curve when we're trying to learn something. When you learn something, it's always easy to forget it shortly after. So this course is designed in a different way based on that. We're going to start with the most difficult topics first. That's because the most difficult topics are ones that need to be learned over a longer period of time. We have a scheduled review of these difficult topics early and often, and we get progressively easier as we get closer to exam day. We also increase the length of review intervals between each repetition. So when you first learn something difficult, you're going to review it shortly after it, and then the time in between review gets longer and longer. Here's an example of what the forgetting curve looks like. When you initially learn something, you might forget it a day later or a few days later. If you review it one time, then you are likely to remember more of it. If you review it 2 or 3 times, you will potentially remember it forever. And that's the goal that we're going for here. Okay, now what are memory palaces? Think of these as imagining a physical location or place in your mind. This is a memory technique. This is a place that you should know well, like your childhood home, or maybe a route that you would drive to work. We plan out a route or a path that you can walk through in your mind. And at each of these places that you're walking through, there are several planned loci points that you will stop along the way. And these are the points where you will mentally try to create pictures to remember things that are difficult. This is especially helpful with vocabulary words or difficult concepts. We will visualize objects and actions at each of these points. You will also associate whatever you want to remember with those points, and I will show you a full-length example. There's a full video on walking through a memory palace with me because I know this sounds a little bit abstract. It's just a tool that we use. Now, a tip is that the crazier or funnier or bigger that these visualizations are, the more memorable that they will be. So let's talk about directness. This is another principle that the course is based on. First up, we like to study concepts from the most realistic sources. So I will create some example prompts through this course that are similar to GRE questions, but the best review questions you can do are the ones from the OG sources I gave you at the beginning. We'll practice as close to real world applications as possible. That means even when you're doing the questions, treat them timed like you would in an exam. Third, we'll focus on recalling and using the information in the same ways that you'll need to apply it later. Now, a tip for this is that the opposite is also true. You should avoid unrealistic or faulty sources. Always time yourself when practicing GRE questions and keep it as realistic as possible. Now let's talk about chunking as our next principle. For chunking, we also want to study according to themes or schemas. You will see things associated or grouped together in chunks. That's because your brain finds it easier to actually recall and remember things when you put them into these drawers, if they're organized in your brain this way. It's easier to mentally store them. For example, if you're doing vocabulary words, you don't want to look at random vocabulary words or do them in alphabetical order. We're going to look at vocabulary words that have similar meanings. We're also going to consider fine distinctions about these items and how they are more or less alike from each other, such as vocabulary words or difficult topics. Now, this applies not to just GRE topics, but every area of study. So think about these patterns whenever you're studying. Lastly, this course is built around a great deal of variety. Variety is the spice of life here when we're studying for an exam. When you look at things in different ways and with different perspectives and with different styles, that again, it engages your brain and it makes things more memorable. When you review concepts in different ways, it creates this spark, this interest. And when your brain is engaged and interested in something, you're more likely to remember it. In this course, when I revisit topics, you're not going to see just the same video over again. It'll be a different presentation, different examples, and different voiceovers put together in new ways. And also for yourself, when you're reviewing material, practice in different ways. Maybe try to solve a question in more than one way. Think of memory palaces with different visualizations and so on. At this point, you might be asking yourself, is that all? Is that the only difference between this course and other courses in how it's structured and the principles? Well, I believe not at all. I think that there are other distinctions that this course has that can be quite beneficial to you. One is that I bring in more advanced concepts, more advanced math concepts than you would typically see in a GRE course. This is helpful if you're aiming for the top percentiles in your math to see the most difficult or unusual sorts of math concepts out there. I also give you a systematic approach to the verbal topics that I haven't seen used anywhere else. And I will give you highly effective test breaking strategies for those easy wins, especially for the low hanging fruit that helps you get your points up. Lastly, there's deeply integrated vocabulary in these courses so that you can learn them more organically. And I also hope that these courses are more entertaining or memorable than other lessons. So again, you can use it on the actual exam and not blank and forget about it. I also want to talk about your fitness for the exam. Think of the GRE as not only a test of content, but also of your focus, mental stamina, and stress management. Remember, we're taking realistic practice in controlled environments with official GRE questions and tests. But I want you to train for this like it's a competition. So improve your nutrition. I'm serious about this. Improve your sleep habits. Build a competitive mindset. Learn breathing exercises to manage stress on the exam. We're going to practice that and think and foster a growth mindset. If you're wondering what the next 3 months of your life are going to look like, well, here it is. This course is structured into 12 weeks where you study 5 days a week. These are 4 shorter study days and one longer day. That's the day 5 at the end. This can be one day on the weekend where you have more time if you're working full time or already going to school. So, what is in this course? The first week gives a general overview of the course and the GRE and the techniques that you need. Your homework for this first week is going to be doing a paper test. In your day 5, we're going to be showing you how to review that paper exam. After that, almost every day is going to have a short video lesson like this that covers the content, followed by practice problems that I will assign to you from the official guides. Later on in the middle of the course, you will start to take more practice exams after you've already learned a lot of the material. So we do that first practice exam to gauge where you're starting from, and then in the middle of the course, you'll do a second practice exam, then review it, and then a third and a fourth until we finally reach game day, which is the real GRE exam. You will also notice that the harder topics and the harder questions we're going to cover first, and you will see these come up again, and we will review these more often. For your next steps, you're going to gather all the resources that you need. If you don't have the official guides, order those now. You will also find a testing location for the GRE, and I want you to schedule a date that works for you 3 months from now. That way you will stick to the course schedule and you don't let things get out of hand. If you don't stick to the 12 weeks and you have large gaps in your study, then you will not absorb everything in the way it's intended. Sometimes taking 4, 5, or 6 months to study is actually harder because you will forget so much more that you did beginning of the exam. This course is designed to follow that forgetting curve of yours and have the optimal time. You don't want to make the study session too short or the study plan too long. Mentally prepare yourself and keep to the schedule. Also, it's time for you to research your target schools and figure out what scores you need to be competitive for that. Don't be afraid to aim really high. Dream big on these. I want you to aim for the highest possible score that you can get. Also, it is helpful to make sort of a verbal contract with what I'd call an accountability buddy. That is someone who you say, hey, I'm going to stick to this program and this study plan and tell them what your goals are. Because if you tell someone about it and have them occasionally check up on you, you're more likely to stick with your goals. And one more piece of advice at some point, and this doesn't have to be now, before your test, I suggest going to the testing center location and getting familiar with it. So if you're going to drive there, know what the drive is like, the parking. If you're going to get there in any other way, just get yourself familiar so you don't have any last minute surprises on test day. Now it's time for your homework. Again, for the day 1, we're going to be doing one section of the paper test in the official guide. There are 2 quantitative sections and 2 verbal sections for the paper test. So for the first 4 days of your study sessions following these first 4 courses, that is your homework. And on day 5, you're going to score yourself for that proxy score. Now, if you don't have the official guide yet, I suggest pausing the rest of the videos until you get the guide and starting with day 2 after you've completed the first section of the test, and you can move on to the next video lesson. At the end of the week, I will show you a short video about how to review your answer choices and how to score yourself, and this will help you going into the other tests. Later on in the course, we will do a second paper-based test, and then there are 2 computer adaptive tests that we will do closer to your exam date, and those will give you the best and closest experience possible to taking the real GRE as a computer adaptive exam. And that's it for today. Thanks.